In Putin's America, all this is done very easily. But with Putin, after all, it's a vast territory where
I didn't say Putin, I said Pooh. Well,
got it. Everyone understood.
everyone understood, yes.
And next we'll hit the brazen, bald mug. That's right. The question is just about money. It's a matter of money, of who to find, because the main thing really is to find the right person. Thank you. A person who is simply part of his inner circle. You can bribe his daughters, you can bribe the oligarchs, some of the Kovalchuk brothers, I don't know, someone else who's tired of hanging around the Russian Federation, or someone else who has long wanted to return to Courchevel, who has long wanted to go back to Paris. Like you see, Dmitry Kirill, he actually enjoys it quite a lot. We were shown several videos of him surfing, skillfully riding the massive waves in Miami, Florida. Here they're shopping in Parisian boutiques. So clearly the man, he really dreams of returning to that comfortable state when he could feel like a normal man, a truly wealthy, successful, and perfectly normal man in normal civilized countries. On the other hand, of course, he has a huge security service around him, a huge service because the Presidential Security Service is 5,000 people and the FSO is 50,000. Thousands of people, and among them there are some who are a bit off, a bit crazy, a few. And of course, technically, this is much more complicated than Maduro, much more.
But in particular, they are absent. And what do you think? Did he himself get scared after what happened to Maduro?
He was scared because Trump isn't planning to kidnap Putin at all. All of this is possible, maybe against non-nuclear states, against the top 5 states, the permanent members of the Security Council, try to kidnap Macron, and France will show you what's what.
And what if the Ukrainians are driven by a sense of utter desperation, boldly reckless in their actions, and fully capable of meticulously planning and executing a complex operation like Operation Spiderweb? I will certainly attempt to investigate this further.
Do it. That's what Putin is afraid of. Putin is really afraid of this because he isn't afraid of the Western world, since he considers them hostages who enforce international law. He got tense with Trump. That is, he didn't approve of what Trump did, but he got tense with him because he realized that Trump set an example of how the Western world can operate in exactly the same ways as Putin does. Because when Putin attacked Ukraine, he told all of us that he was acting in the name of international law, so to speak. But everyone understood that this was a violation of the UN Charter, and even the UN itself voted on this, and so on. But he was convinced that the Westerners, since they are so civilized, would not work using uncivilized methods. Take Israel, for example. He would never do anything serious against Israel because he knows that Mossad, which has killed, those very specific individuals in the past, there are all sorts of dangerous terrorists operating right inside Iran, even during the solemn funeral of the previous president, who famously used to kidnap former Nazis from Latin America and simply didn't bother with any international law, any formal regulations, or really anything at all in that regard. They would just come, take them from...
You mean the story about the abduction of Adolf Eichmann from Argentina, right? In
particular, for example, yes. So Putin, of course, didn't understand that Trump was never going to kidnap him. Why would Trump kidnap him if he could just invite him to Alaska? And Putin will come to Alaska, and that's it. No problems at all. Why do that?
And they'll welcome him there if anything happens. They'll welcome him.
If anything happens. I think, by the way, after this, Putin will think about only going to Alaska. Furthermore, regarding the specific points that Vladimir Putin recently voiced about the necessity of preserving negotiations, this entire complex narrative and unfolding story with the attack on Valdai, he clearly understands that there are a few specific people in Ukraine who possess the unique capacity and the luxury to think in a completely different manner. And these are individuals who do not care at all about the way in which they are ultimately judged by society and so on. And really, we understand that if General Kirillov can be killed by a scooter in the center of Moscow, then why can't Putin be killed by some other drone, somewhere else in another place? Because he does come out from time to time out of his bunker. So potentially anything is possible, anything can be done. It's a matter of desire and opportunity.
By the way, right now, the extremely important issue regarding the process of selecting and appointing a new head of the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine is just about to be officially decided. Who do you personally think it will eventually be? Interestingly, the name of the former foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, is currently being prominently named as a top candidate. In this case, that's quite possible. Thank you. The focus will be on the fact that, first and foremost, this will be intelligence work conducted, let's say, by informational and diplomatic methods under the cover of Ukrainian embassies and missions, and so on. Well, and so to speak, if it turns out to be either Beletsky or the previous head of the SBU, then in this case, it is believed that the focus will be on conducting special operations like in Venezuela.
I don't think that this will be the appointment, both this and that. Because, look, Budanov, it seems, met with the head of French intelligence, and the French intelligence DGSE is structured in such a way. If you look at recent times, almost all of the leadership there were former diplomats. That is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who then become directors of the DGSE. So that's the first option. That's what you were talking about regarding the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. But at the same time, within this service, there is the so-called Service d'Action, the Service of Active Measures, headed by a general who is responsible for things like those explosions. Do you remember we told the story about the Greenpeace ship? And so on and so forth. So, in fact, I don't rule out the possibility that the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Kuleba, could become the head of the SVF. But in reality, for example, the actual operations might be carried out by the operational directorate, as they said, not by the Foreign Active Measures Unit, headed, for example, by Malyuk, or that same army commander we mentioned earlier. Andriy.
Beretsky.
Yes, so it could even turn out that way.
Or it is quite possible that they might even establish and develop a completely unprecedented and unique specialized professional service. And
that could also happen because Malyuk was a bit offended by his dismissal from the SBU. But you see, he wasn't fired. He wasn't exiled anywhere. They told him that as an operative, he's very good, and most likely he should continue doing this kind of work. But maybe there were some complaints about him as the head of the SBU, because after all, these are large agencies where it's not just about organizing active operations, but also about personnel work, political work, religious affairs, and so on. And perhaps this is in
his case, counterintelligence and the divisions involved in fighting corruption and organized crime.
And in my opinion, there's a similar situation as there was in the KGB, meaning they have their own investigation and inquiry units for state security cases. So in this sense, maybe he didn't quite measure up as a leader. So in this sense, I don't rule out that such an offer might be made to him, and Ukraine might find something like that. Such a scenario for the development of its special services